Picture this. A legendary New York radio show shuts its doors after more than a decade, and before the dust can even settle, one of the biggest artists on the planet quietly steps into the comments and lights a match. No press run. No interview. No diss record. Just one emoji. A hatchet. And suddenly, hip-hop is on fire again. Not because of new music, but because of old wounds that never really healed. Welcome to Celebrity Rap Life, where the red carpets never roll up and the spotlight never fades. The rewards are legendary. Because in Celebrity Rap Life, every downfall can become a comeback, and every headline tells a deeper story. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a second of what's coming next. So the question becomes unavoidable. Was Drake celebrating the downfall of people who spent years criticizing him? Or was this simply the universe lining up the final chapter of one of hip-hop's most uncomfortable media standoffs? Because when Hot 97 announced the cancellation of Ebro in the morning, the reaction wasn't just shock or nostalgia. It turned into something way messier, way more personal, and way more revealing about where power really sits in hip-hop right now. Drake didn't need to explain himself. He didn't need to type a sentence. That single hatchet emoji under an Instagram post did all the talking. To some, it read like a victory lap. To others, it felt petty. But to anyone who's been paying attention for the last 10+ years, it felt inevitable. That emoji wasn't random. It wasn't a joke. It was years of tension, resentment, and unresolved conflict boiling over in the most Drake way possible. Quiet. Calculated. Cold. To understand why this hit so hard, you have to rewind the tape. Ebro in the Morning wasn't just another radio show. Since launching in 2012, Ebro Darden, Peter Rosenberg, and Laura Stiles became fixtures in hip-hop culture. They weren't background noise. They were loud voices shaping conversations, breaking artists, critiquing albums, and sometimes flat-out calling rappers frauds on air. Before that, Ebro already had power at Hot 97, running programming in the mid-2000s. This was not some random podcast crew throwing hot takes for clicks. These were gatekeepers in the most literal sense. And Drake came up during an era when gatekeepers mattered. Early in his career, radio validation still carried weight, especially in New York. But Drake's relationship with Hot 97 was never smooth. Over the years, Ebro and Rosenberg questioned his authenticity, his cultural positioning, and even his place in hip-hop. They critiqued his music harshly at times, mocked his image, and openly challenged whether he represented the culture the way his success suggested. From Drake's perspective, this wasn't constructive criticism. It felt personal. It felt dismissive. And more importantly, it felt like people in powerful positions constantly downplaying his impact while benefiting from talking about him. Those moments stacked up. Awkward interviews. On-air comments that went viral. Clips that lived forever on the internet. And Drake is not the type to forget any of it. He's built an entire career on memory, on subliminals, on letting things simmer until the timing feels right. So when Ebro in the Morning officially ended, Drake didn't see a cancellation announcement. He saw a full circle moment. The spark came when Keep 6ix9ine Solid, a well-known hip-hop news page, posted the update that the show was done. No dramatics. Just facts. But when Drake dropped that hatchet emoji in the comments, everything changed. The comment section turned into chaos almost instantly. Fans laughed. Critics groaned. Memes flooded timelines. Some called it legendary levels of petty. Others asked why someone with Drake's level of success would even care. But the people who really understood didn't ask why. They already knew. To them, that emoji said you talked. You doubted. You questioned. And now you're gone while I'm still here. It was a statement about survival, longevity, and power. Drake didn't just outlast trends. He outlasted critics who once held influence over him. In hip-hop, that matters. Of course, the hosts weren't going to let that slide. Ebro responded quickly and aggressively. He didn't just dismiss Drake's comment. He escalated it. He labeled Drake as right-wing and questioned his politics and cultural alignment. That's not a light accusation in hip-hop. That's a direct shot at credibility, at belonging, at identity. Ebro was essentially saying that Drake doesn't represent the culture the way his numbers suggest, and that his success comes with compromises that shouldn't be ignored. Peter Rosenberg followed up with his own response, expressing disappointment and frustration. He suggested that Drake's behavior made it harder to defend his artistry, even when he wanted to. Rosenberg has long positioned himself as someone who appreciates lyricism and craft, but his comments made it clear that Drake's pettiness crossed a personal line for him. Now the situation wasn't just Drake versus a cancelled radio show. It turned into a full-blown culture debate. Fans split into camps instantly. One side saw Drake as a boss finally getting his moment. The other saw him as a superstar punching down on media personalities who were simply doing their jobs. Then Ebro added another layer. He hinted that the cancellation of the show wasn't about ratings or relevance at all. According to him, it was political. He suggested that his outspoken views on social issues, global politics, and government accountability made Hot 97 uncomfortable. That management chose corporate safety over uncomfortable conversations. In his version of the story, the show didn't fail. It was silenced. That narrative resonated with a lot of people. Media consolidation, corporate pressure, advertisers influencing content. These aren't new conversations, but hearing them from someone who just lost a major platform gave them fresh weight. Suddenly, Drake's emoji existed inside a much bigger discussion about who gets silenced and who gets celebrated in modern hip-hop media. But Drake wasn't standing alone. Support poured in from fans and fellow artists. BAS stepped up publicly, defending Drake and highlighting his global impact. He reminded people that Drake has consistently opened doors for artists across continents. UK rappers, African artists, Caribbean sounds. Drake didn't just dominate charts. He expanded what mainstream hip-hop could sound like and who it could include. To supporters, that mattered more than any radio critique. Fans followed suit, flooding timelines with Drake's achievements. Record-breaking albums, chart dominance, cultural influence, fashion, slang, longevity. In their eyes, Drake earned the right to respond however he wanted. The hatchet emoji wasn't immature. It was earned closure. Still, the criticism didn't stop. Many argued that radio hosts are supposed to critique artists. That accountability is part of the culture. Without voices like Ebro and Rosenberg, hip-hop risks becoming an echo chamber where success equals immunity. They questioned why Drake, of all people, still seemed bothered by criticism after everything he's achieved. To them, the emoji revealed insecurity rather than dominance. But Drake has never pretended to be above it all. He's always been emotional, always been reactive, always been willing to respond when he feels disrespected. That's part of his brand. He doesn't pretend slights don't hurt. He documents them. And when the moment feels right, he reminds people he remembers. The end of Ebro in the Morning marks a real shift in hip-hop radio. Love them or hate them, that show mattered. It introduced artists, sparked debates, asked uncomfortable questions. It wasn't safe. It wasn't always likable, but it was influential. Now that it's gone, there's a gap. And people are wondering what fills it. Are we moving into an era where artists control everything and media simply follows? Where critique is replaced with access and silence is safer than honesty? Drake's emoji unintentionally highlighted that shift. He doesn't need radio. He doesn't need interviews. He doesn't need approval. His audience is already built in. That's what made the comments sting so much. It symbolized the power shift from gatekeepers to artists. From radio to social media. From critique to direct connection. Drake wasn't just reacting to a show ending. He was standing on top of a new system where voices like his don't need permission. And yet, despite all the analysis, the think pieces, and the arguing, the simplest truth remains. People are talking. About Drake. About Ebro. About media. About power. About culture. That's hip-hop. Messy. Loud. Emotional. Unresolved. Drake's hatchet emoji will be remembered not because it was shocking, but because it was honest. It revealed how deeply personal these industry relationships really are. And while Ebro and Rosenberg will absolutely resurface on new platforms, with new audiences and new influence, this moment belongs to Drake. Not because he won a beef. Not because a show got cancelled. But because he reminded everyone that in hip-hop, nothing is ever forgotten. Timing is everything. And when the moment arrives, sometimes one small symbol is louder than any diss track could ever be. The streets are still buzzing. The memes are still flying. The debate isn't over. And that's exactly how hip-hop likes it. Uncomfortable, unfiltered, and very much alive. This story is far from over, and the truth is still unfolding. I want to hear what you think. Drop your take in the comments. And if you don't want to miss the next twist, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a second of what's coming next.